Hi, I'm Ernestina. My father fired me in front of our biggest client while I was saving his company with a $36 million plan. I didn't argue. I just said, all right. But what he didn't know was that the client pulled me aside after the meeting. And what happened outside that room? It made his face go pale. That day didn't break me. It woke me up, because betrayal never starts with one moment. It starts in every silence you were told to keep. Before we dive in, tell me, have you ever been pushed out by your own family just so they could keep your spotlight? Drop a comment and stay with me, because this story, it doesn't end where they tried to bury me. It begins right there. The ballroom shimmered with soft golden light, the kind that made everything feel more expensive than it really was. Crystal chandeliers swayed slightly above the long tables dressed in cream linens. Laughter floated between clinks of wine glasses. It was the Dalton Corp. Annual client dinner, our biggest event of the year, and for me, the night I'd finally prove something that had taken me 12 years to build. I stood behind the podium, palms lightly resting on the mahogany edge, breathing in the scent of polished wood and wine. The strategy presentation slides waited quietly behind me, glowing on the massive LED screen. My father, Adam Beckerink, sat at the head of the central table, swirling bourbon in his glass like he had somewhere better to be. I knew that look, the same one he wore at my high school graduation, like attending was a chore. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't a teenager desperate for his approval. I was the woman who just secured a $36 million expansion deal with one of our largest clients, Tech Solutions. I cleared my throat, forcing a smile. Good evening, everyone. I want to walk you through a plan we believe will change the trajectory of Dalton Corp. Over the next 3 quarters, I clicked through the slides with practiced calm, laying out the funding roadmap, asset reallocation model, and a low-risk merger forecast. The room leaned in. Even Henry Hahn, notoriously unreadable, gave a slow, approving nod as I spoke. Just as I reached the final projection, the number that proved everything I said had worked. My father stood. Before we go further, he said, clinking his glass for attention, I'd like to make an announcement. My hand hovered over the clicker. I blinked. Maybe he was finally going to say it. Just a few words of acknowledgement, a public thank you. She's done, he said. This was her final project. Ernestina is no longer with Dalton Corp. The silence hit harder than a slap. Forks froze mid-air. Someone let out a quiet, startled cough. I felt my breath leave me. My mouth stayed closed. My chest. It screamed. He didn't look at me, not even once. Just turned to Henry and said, We're transitioning leadership. Fresh. Direction. You know how it is. Fresh direction? I had carried this company on my back while he played golf in Scottsdale and booked executive retreats in Vegas. Transitioning leadership? I swallowed the heat rising in my throat and nodded. All right, I said. My voice came out steady, controlled, not because I wasn't broken, but because I refused to let anyone see the pieces falling. I turned back to the screen and calmly wrapped up the presentation. Every word that left my mouth was a practiced dagger, polished with grace. After the applause, light, awkward, I stepped off stage and grabbed a glass of water with hands that didn't shake, even though my legs felt hollow. My father laughed too loud with a group of partners, shaking hands like nothing had happened. I was halfway to the exit when I felt a light touch on my elbow. It was Henry. Can we talk outside? He said quietly, eyes flicking toward my father. I nodded and followed him through the side door, the autumn air slicing against my skin like truth. We stepped into the empty valet loop, where the hum of engines and chatter faded behind the glass. The air was sharp, my pulse louder than the city traffic. He glanced over his shoulder, scanning the lobby windows as if my father might appear at any second. Then Henry stepped a little closer, voice lowered. "I've worked with your father for 20 years, he said. "I've seen him cut deals that would make a shark blush, but what he pulled in there, that was personal. That wasn't business." I didn't say anything right away. The wind tugged at my hair, the hem of my dress. Somewhere down the block, a car horn honked and faded. But in that little pocket of cold air between us, something shifted. "He runs the company like it's a kingdom," I finally replied, and I was never supposed to be anything more than a quiet subject. Henry's brow furrowed like he was chewing on the weight of that. "I went through every page of your strategy packet this week," he said. "I saw the structure, the numbers, the language. That wasn't your father's work, and it sure as hell wasn't your brother's." The ache in my jaw reminded me I'd been clenching it for hours. But hearing someone say it, not whisper it behind closed doors, not mutter it during a cocktail break, but say it out loud to my face, that made something inside me settle. Just a little. He went on. "That plan saved my company. You saved my company. That's the truth." A beat passed. I didn't cry, even though I thought I might. I just nodded once and said, "Thank you." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek black card. Simple, just his name, number, and the words, "Private line." "If you ever want to talk business again," he said, "call me, directly." There was something in the way he said it. Not flirtation, not pity. Respect, recognition. The kind I hadn't felt in a room full of suits since, well, ever. I took the card and held it in my hand for a second before slipping it into my purse. When I looked back toward the ballroom, I saw my father through the tall window panes, laughing. He raised his glass to someone. Mason was probably by his side, acting like he built that strategy himself, the way he always did. My breath caught in my throat, and not because of the cold. There was a time, not too long ago, when I thought maybe if I worked hard enough, if I stayed late enough, if I kept every promise and fixed every mess, he'd finally look at me and say, "You did good, Tina." But he never did. Not once. Mason, though? He got the praise for tying his own shoes. I remembered being 26, sitting at my kitchen table at 2 a.m., red penning a proposal for Mason while he slept off another weekend in Vegas. "You're better with numbers than I am," he'd always say, like that excused it. I rewrote every forecast. I cleaned up the balance sheets he botched. I negotiated the vendor contracts when he forgot to show up. I even sat in on conference calls using his login because they take me more seriously with a man's name on the screen. And my father, he just watched, let it happen, encouraged it even, because admitting I was the engine meant admitting he needed me. And men like my father don't admit dependence. They destroy what makes them feel small. "I didn't realize," I said quietly, watching him clink glasses with the board members, "that silence could burn louder than shouting." Henry turned to look at me. "You deserve better than that." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. A valet jogged past us, laughing into his Bluetooth headset. The city moved on, like it always did, but something in me didn't. I reached for the strap of my purse, let my fingers graze the edge of Henry's card one more time, and then turned away from the glowing windows. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't owe anyone inside that building a damn thing. I walked down the block, heels clicking softer now that I wasn't holding my breath. Each step felt like peeling off a layer of old skin, the kind you didn't realize was choking you until it was gone. I didn't go home that night. I drove. No music, just the hum of the highway and the weight of my own heartbeat. I drove with no music, no destination, just the dull hum of the tires on concrete and the sharp click of my blinker at intersections I didn't remember choosing. My hands moved, steering, turning, accelerating, but my mind had already arrived. The parking lot was almost invisible in the dark. The overhead lights that once buzzed with life had long since gone out, leaving the old Dalton Financial Satellite office swallowed in shadow. I pulled up beside a faded, "Reserved for Management" sign and cut the engine. It looked just like I remembered, except emptier, like even the building had stopped pretending to matter. 2 years ago, my father shut this branch down, told everyone it was bleeding money. "Dead weight," he said during a quarterly call. "Doesn't make sense to keep it open." He never mentioned that this was the office I used to stay late in, quietly rebuilding the main branch's books after Mason botched the numbers. I grabbed my laptop from the back seat. This time, I came prepared. The keypad still blinked. Same code, same stubborn beep. I punched it in, my old birthday. A soft click, and the door opened like it had been waiting. Inside, the air smelled like forgotten paperwork and industrial carpet. No music, no HVAC, just silence and memory. I walked through the rows of cubicles, dim light from the exit sign barely touching the walls. Each desk told its own story. A cracked photo frame, a dusty coffee mug, a post-it note curling at the edges. I passed the corner office, Mason's old spot. He only used it when there was someone to impress. Otherwise, he was working remotely, which meant Cabo or Colorado, or some other place he could duck responsibility with a Wi-Fi signal. My cubicle was at the back, tucked near the emergency exit. No windows, no nameplate. Just me, 2 monitors, and the drawer where I kept snacks and backup contracts. I slid the chair back and sat down slowly, the way you do when your body's tired, but your brain refuses to shut off. The drawer stuck for a second, then gave. Inside, beneath some old receipts and a mint tin, was a small black flash drive with a label scratched in fading ink. Q4 Drafts. I stared at it for a long moment before plugging it into my laptop. The screen lit up, fan humming low, folders loaded, one by one. Forecast Q-Force V5. Client deck war merge. Revenue reclaim 2020 final. The files weren't just familiar, they were mine. Word for word, chart for chart, structure, tone, logic. My formatting, my formulas, except they weren't attributed to me. When I opened the PDFs, the cover pages said, "Prepared by Mason Beckerink." In every document. I scrolled deeper, opened the raw spreadsheets, tracked the revision history. There it was, forwarded emails from my father. Subject lines like "use this version" and "make this your own" cleanup language. Each one directed to Mason. Each one signed off by Dad with a casual team input tag. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an oversight. It was a process, systematic, routine, rebrand and remove. I leaned back, eyes still on the screen, like if I stared hard enough, the truth would soften. But it didn't. This wasn't about one project. It wasn't even about me being fired. It was years of work, hundreds of hours of rebuilding, cleaning up their messes, rescuing deals, all stripped of my name, repackaged under someone else's, like I'd never been there. A blinking notification appeared in the corner. Voicemail, an old one. I clicked it. The speaker crackled, then a voice, "Lauren, from accounting. She left the same week this office shut down. Ernestina, I shouldn't be doing this, but they're transferring your documents to Mason's Drive tonight. I didn't want to be part of it. I quit. I'm sorry." Click. I sat there, still, barely breathing. A strange kind of calm settled over me. Not peace, not even clarity. Just cold understanding. He didn't just want me gone, he wanted me erased. But here it was. All of it. Unchanged. Undeniable. I copied the entire folder to a new drive, slipped it into my bag, and closed the laptop slowly. My fingers brushed the edge of the flash drive, still warm from the port. Outside, the wind was picking up. The kind of wind that sounds like it's warning you or daring you. I stood, looked around the office one last time, and whispered to no one in particular, "All right, let's finish what they started." I barely slept. My body had been still for hours, but my thoughts never stopped moving. They circled like vultures, over files, voices, emails, Mason's smug face, Dad's hollow smile. I had copied the truth, tucked it away safely. But I knew them. I knew their timing. They'd come looking. By morning, the light creeping through my blinds felt sharper than usual. I wrapped my robe around me, stood barefoot in the kitchen, and stared at the coffee machine, blinking but never pressing the button. My mind wasn't in the mood for caffeine. My gut was bracing for impact. At exactly 7:32 a.m., 3 sharp knocks echoed through my apartment. I didn't have to guess. I already knew. I opened the door slowly, chain still hooked. And there he was, Mason, still in last night's navy suit, wrinkled at the collar, tie askew. He didn't look tired. He looked rehearsed. "Morning, sis," he said, eyes scanning my face like he was reading a balance sheet. "Dad told me you went by the old office. Looking for nostalgia, huh?" I unhooked the chain without answering and let him in. He stepped inside casually, like this was just another sibling drop-by. His gaze moved from my bookshelf to the dining table, then to the closed laptop beside my purse. "I didn't expect you to be up so early," I said, finally breaking the silence. "Well, let's just say the board wasn't thrilled to wake up to a security flag on one of our deactivated access points," he replied. "You really never could let things go." He made his way to the counter, fingers brushing the edge of a photo frame, Mom and me at my college graduation. He didn't touch it, just paused long enough for me to notice. I didn't offer him coffee. I barely blinked. Then came the mask drop. "You shouldn't have gone there," he said, voice lower. "Those files are company property." I didn't flinch. "My name was on them before you deleted it." He took one slow step toward me. "You always think you're the victim." I held his stare. "No, I think I was the labor." Mason smiled, tight, condescending. "You're lucky Dad kept you on the payroll as long as he did. You should have just stayed where you were. It was working, for everyone." "You mean I should have stayed invisible," I said, keeping my voice even. His jaw clenched, but he softened it quickly. "Come on, Tina. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. Henry Hahn called this morning. He asked for you. Not Dad, not me." He let that hang. "Don't embarrass the family," he added quietly. I'd heard those words my entire life. Whispered after dinners, scolded during childhood parties, hissed across tables anytime I said something that didn't fit Dad's narrative. Don't embarrass the family. It was never about dignity. It was about control. Mason turned to leave but paused at the door. "Just let it go," he muttered without looking back. "It's not worth it." He stepped out and was gone. I stood still, listening for the elevator ding down the hall. When I heard it, I locked the door, deadbolt and all. My hands were trembling, but my breath was steady. I walked to the table, opened the laptop. The files were still there, untouched, encrypted, safe. I opened a new message, no subject, just one line. "Can we meet privately?" I sent it to Henry. Just then, through the kitchen window, I saw Mrs. Daly watering her gardenia plant on her patio across the way. She looked up and waved with that same warm expression she'd worn for the last 20 years. I smiled and waved back. But the second she turned, my smile fell. They'd spent years turning my silence into their power. Maybe it was time I let silence work for me. Henry replied in under 5 minutes. The message was simple. "Meet me at Greenhaven, noon." It wasn't a surprise. The place had been my father's unofficial empire for as long as I could remember. Not the office downtown, not even the corporate headquarters with the glass elevators and steel conference tables. No, real decisions were made over tea times and bourbon pours. He once told me, boardrooms are for signatures, golf carts are for power. So, by late morning, I was driving past iron gates and manicured hedges, the hum of my tires on brick-paved roads masking the churn in my stomach. Greenhaven looked exactly as I remembered, arrogant. The valet nodded with a half-smile and took my keys like he'd been trained to recognize people with last names like Beckerink, not Lucero. Inside the clubhouse, everything smelled faintly of cigar smoke and old money. Men in crisp polos and tailored blazers milled about with that slow, confident posture that came from knowing they'd never had to beg for a seat at the table. I spotted Henry near the window, tucked into a corner booth overlooking the 18th green. He stood when he saw me. "Ernestina," he said warmly, motioning for me to sit. "You held your composure that night better than most CEOs I know." I let out a soft exhale, sliding into the booth across from him. "Composure's cheaper than dignity," I replied, watching a cart roll by in the distance. "But it lasts longer." Henry gave a small, thoughtful smile. No follow-up, no flattery. Just quiet understanding. We ordered coffee for me, iced tea for him, and waited until the waiter stepped away before he spoke again. "I'm going to get to the point," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "Your father's company is in deeper trouble than he's letting on, and I believe you already know that." I opened the folder slowly. Inside were printed ledgers, internal transfers, suspicious account shifts, payment allocations under Mason's name. All approved, all signed, by Adam. "They used your projections to mask shortfalls," Henry continued, "falsified the credit lines, restructured the debt portfolio using models you created, quietly, efficiently." My eyes locked onto a specific line, a large amount funneled through a vendor account I hadn't worked with in over a year, but the formatting was unmistakably mine. "They used my numbers to keep their empire alive," I said, barely above a whisper, "then cut me out to save face." Henry didn't nod. He just watched me. Then he leaned forward, folding his hands like a priest at confession. "I can help you, Ernestina, but you need to decide what you really want, revenge or freedom." That gave me pause. "I'm not sure there's a difference," I said. "There is," he replied gently. "Revenge keeps you tied to them. Freedom means walking away with something they can't take again, your own name." The weight of that landed differently. No fire, no drama, just clarity. I glanced out the window and there he was, my father, mid-swing, laughing with a man I didn't recognize. He looked lighter, like betrayal suited him. He didn't see me, he didn't need to. He still believed I was that quiet girl in the corner, the one who stayed behind, took notes, cleaned up Mason's errors, and handed over polished work with no signature. Maybe I still was, but not for long. I turned back to Henry. "If I say yes," I said carefully, "what does it look like?" "You start your own firm," he said plainly. "I back it. You get clients, real ones, not just hand-me-downs. We launch Monday." "Just like that?" "No, not just like that," he said, "but that's how it begins." I looked down at the folder one more time, then closed it. "All right." Henry didn't smile this time. He just nodded, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not panic, not even hope. Resolve. We stood, parted without a handshake. No need. Everything important had already been said. As I walked toward the exit, the wind outside was warmer than I expected. The kind that usually meant a storm wasn't far off. I didn't care. I'd survived worse weather. The weekend had been quiet, unnervingly so. No emails, no phone calls, just silence, like the calm before a storm that doesn't bother to announce itself. Sunday morning, around 7:30, I was still in my robe, standing in the kitchen with half a grapefruit and a cold cup of coffee, when I heard it, a sharp metallic slide against the floor. I walked toward the door slowly. There, lying just past the threshold, was a plain, unmarked envelope. No return address, no postage, just my name, written in blocky black letters across the front. My heart thudded once, hard. I crouched down, picked it up, and tore the seal. Inside, a single photo. Me and Henry, sitting at that table at Greenhaven, faces calm, eyes focused. The angle was distant, likely taken from a car or behind a tinted window. But it was clear enough. Enough to say, "We see you." Taped to the bottom of the photo was a sticky note, cream-colored like it came from my father's office drawer. "Think twice before betraying blood." My hands clenched the edges of the paper until they curled. I turned slowly, checked each lock on the front door. Chain, deadbolt, reinforced bar, all in place. Then I moved to the blinds. The street below was still and quiet, except for one thing. A black sedan parked directly across from my building. Engine off, windows dark, empty. Or at least it looked empty from where I stood. I didn't need to guess who had eyes on me. I grabbed my phone and dialed Henry. He picked up before the second ring. "They sent someone," I said, not bothering with hello. "To my house." His tone sharpened. "Are you okay?" "They slid a photo under my door, you and me, yesterday, with a note." He was silent for a beat, then, "Don't confront them yet. Let them think you're still uncertain." "I'm not uncertain," I said, voice low and even. "I'm furious," Henry sighed. "That's exactly why they're pushing now. They want you rattled, off balance. Stay calm." I hung up without promising him anything. Walking back to my desk, I opened my laptop, tried to log into my work email, the one still technically attached to Dalton Financial. Access denied, credentials invalid. I tried twice more, nothing. I opened the internal dashboard URL from memory, a system I helped design, and saw what I feared. My profile was gone. In its place? Head of Strategic Operations, Mason Beckerink. Just like that, they'd wiped me clean again, fired me, erased me, and then buried my name under Mason's as if I never existed. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until the screen blurred from the pressure behind my eyes. Back when I was 19, Mason had mishandled a small investment client, lost them close to $80,000. My father called me into his office and said, "Tina, family doesn't argue in public. You'll take the heat this time." I didn't even speak up. Now, as I stared at my blank access screen, that same voice echoed in my head, calm, dismissive, trained in the art of intimidation disguised as legacy. Family doesn't argue in public, but it does stalk. It spies, it lies, and it silences. I opened a new file on my desktop, named it Project Phoenix. Inside, I began compiling. Every email, every document I'd saved, every suspicious financial transfer, every model stripped of my name. Anything I had pulled from the flash drive, every proof of erasure. This time, I wasn't playing nice. The phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach clench. Dad. I debated letting it ring, but my thumb betrayed me. I answered. His voice came through smooth as syrup. "Tina, we both know you've been emotional lately. Let's not turn this into something it doesn't have to be." I said nothing at first. He went on, "I understand how upset you must feel. Transitions are never easy, but they're necessary for the good of the family, of the company. You sent someone to my house." A pause. Slight. Barely there. "You always read too much into things." I felt my jaw tighten. You had me followed. You had me erased. What else am I supposed to think? I'm trying to avoid more damage. Let's keep this clean. Clean? I laughed, bitter and short. You scrubbed me out of my own work, and now you're telling me to be tidy about it? He didn't answer, just ended the call. The screen went black. My reflection stared back at me, tired, furious, and, more than anything, clear-eyed. They'd been rewriting my story for years, making me invisible where it counted, visible only when it served them. But this time, they didn't just try to erase me, they warned me. And in doing so, they told me exactly where they were most afraid I'd strike. That night, I sat in silence for hours. No TV, no music, just the steady click of keys as I uploaded everything, every file, every note, every number. When it was done, I sent it to one person, the one man in this mess they hadn't been able to bend, the only one my father had no control over. Henry Hahn. The upload was done by midnight. The files were sent. I should have felt relief, but by the time the sun came up, my phone was buzzing like a hive kicked open. Calls, texts, email pings, social media alerts, dozens of notifications stacked on top of each other, faster than I could open them. I blinked myself awake, dragged my phone to my face, and there it was. Dalton Corp distances itself from internal fraud led by ex-employee Ernestina Lucero. My name, my face, my past, all now smeared across business media, LinkedIn posts, company bulletins. They used an old corporate headshot, one I always hated. I looked unsure in it, like I was trying to smile my way out of an ambush. Fitting, I guess. I sat there on the edge of the bed, still in my t-shirt from the night before, scrolling through the press release. Every word carefully crafted by their PR team. Clinical, cold. Lucero's unauthorized handling of proprietary data violated company policy. No formal complaint has been filed at this time, but we take matters of integrity seriously. Dalton Financial is cooperating with internal reviews. I laughed once, dry. Unauthorized handling, I whispered. They stole my work, locked me out, and called it unauthorized. That's rich. My phone lit up again. Henry. They're going scorched earth, he said without preamble. They want to crush you publicly before your evidence gets traction. I know, I replied. My voice was steady, but my hands weren't. They've played this game before. They just never had to play it with me. Stay calm, Tina. We'll hit back, but on the right ground at the right time. Today is just the noise. No, I said. Today is the day they think they've won. That matters. We met around 11 at a cafe tucked between a bank and a tailor downtown. The kind of place with dim lights and strong coffee, the kind no one under 30 walks into voluntarily. He slid into the booth across from me, phone in hand. They've called a press conference. 3 o'clock. Your dad and Mason are addressing the situation. He made air quotes. They're getting ahead of the story, I said. They're trying to bury the real one. I stared at the sugar packets between us. Then I'll be there. He stiffened. You can't. They'll have security. You walk in, they'll spin it like you're unstable. I leaned back, the edge of a smile on my lips. Who said I'm walking through the front door? At 2:50 p.m., the press room inside Dalton's main branch was already packed. Cameras, reporters, flashes. The logo plastered across the screen behind the podium like a seal of integrity. Adam stepped out first, calm, measured. He wore his favorite navy suit and that neutral expression he used when firing people who didn't know it was coming. Mason followed, jaw tight, eyes scanning the crowd like he expected someone to leap out and call him a fraud. The room hushed. Adam stepped to the mic. We're here today to address recent speculation regarding former employee Ernestina Lucero, he began. While we are limited in what we can disclose due to ongoing reviews, the screen behind him flickered. A buzz moved through the room. The Dalton logo vanished. In its place, a document appeared. Confidential Dalton financial files. Financial models, mine. Time-stamped under my old credentials. Sequential reports. Then another screen. The transfer approvals. Mason's name. Adam's signature. Gasps cut through the air like a ripple on water. And then, my voice. Clear, calm. Coming through the speakers like I was standing there among them. If you want to know who really saved this company, check who worked through Christmas night. Check who rewrote the forecasts while everyone else was on vacation, and then check who signed their name at the bottom. Chaos. Reporters shouted. Cameras clicked faster. Adam turned sharply to his left, hissing something off mic. Mason went sheet white. Adam barked, "Cut the feed." But it was too late. The room had seen. The world had heard. I watched it all from a coffee shop across the street, earbuds in, hands wrapped around a warm cup of black tea I barely tasted. For the first time in years, I felt light. They finally told the world who I was, not with their words, but with mine. That night, headlines ran wild. The Dalton leak. They used that name like it was a scandal. To me, it felt like a release. For once, I wasn't the one being silenced. I was the one turning up the volume. Just before sunrise, I stepped outside. The air was brittle, sharp against my skin. November cold with that bite in the wind that hinted winter was close. The street was quiet, but the black sedan idling at the curb didn't belong in my neighborhood. Its windows were dark, engine still humming. I walked down the steps slowly, each one deliberate. The back door swung open before I reached it. I didn't have to ask who was inside. He sat there, coat buttoned to the neck, eyes shadowed and sunken like he hadn't slept. No small talk, just a nod. I got in without a word. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing us in the kind of silence that wasn't empty. It was loaded. The driver pulled off without instructions. We rolled through the city, the early morning fog softening the edges of everything. Office buildings still asleep, traffic lights blinking like they were waiting for someone to argue with them. Finally, he spoke. "You embarrassed me." I turned my head slightly, not enough to meet his eyes. "You embarrassed me long before this, Dad." He exhaled through his nose. "You embarrassed this family." I laughed, quiet and dry. "You ended my career over a plate of roast duck. That wasn't embarrassment. That was an execution." He stared out the windshield. "You could have come to me privately. You made sure there was no privately left." He didn't argue. 10 minutes later, we pulled into a deserted lot near one of the old Dalton storage facilities, one of the places the company used before going public. The place felt forgotten, abandoned, like it was waiting to be leveled. He turned the engine off. "Get out," he said. I stepped out first. Gravel crunched beneath my boots. The air smelled like wet metal and motor oil. He followed, closing the car door slowly, like he was buying time. "I built this," he said. "From nothing. I gave you everything." I turned to face him. "And when I built something of my own, you took it. And when I spoke up, you tried to bury me. You think leaking those documents makes you honest? No, but it makes me less of a coward than you." His expression changed, the hard corporate mask slipping for a moment into something raw. He took a step closer. "You think people respect whistleblowers? You'll be forgotten by next quarter. You'll be the woman who turned on her own blood." I stared straight at him. "Better than rotting quietly in your shadow." Then, out of nowhere, a bitter laugh. "You really are your mother's daughter." I flinched. He saw it. "She didn't know how to keep her place either." "You mean she wouldn't keep quiet about the things you did?" "She couldn't see the bigger picture, just Like you. No, I said, stepping in close. I see it clearly now. You've built your entire life convincing everyone they owe you, even your own kids. He looked down, then back up, reached into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope, held it out like it was a peace offering. What's this? I asked, not reaching for it. Your way out. Sign it, and all of this goes away. I'll restore your position, rewrite the story. I opened it. Inside was a drafted confession, claiming I'd acted alone in manipulating data, clearing my father and Mason completely. You really thought I'd save you again? I'm giving you a chance. No, I said, folding the paper and placing it back into the envelope. You're offering another cage. He raised his voice. You think you can walk away from this clean? I think I already did. I turned to walk back toward the car, the morning sun just beginning to break through the gray sky. But something in me stopped. I turned back. Oh, I said over my shoulder. Henry told me I should record this conversation. His face twitched. You didn't. I held up my phone, screen lit, red dot blinking. I did. And just as his mouth opened, probably to threaten, maybe to beg, another car pulled into the lot. Henry stepped out, calm as ever. He held his phone up, recording. We've got everything, he said, voice even. Time-stamped, GPS verified. Adam Beckerink, the man who built an empire on control, finally lost his grip. His face drained of color. His lips moved, but no sound came out. I walked past him, not rushing. I didn't need to. You told everyone I was too emotional, I said. Well, turns out my emotions came with receipts. Henry was already calling the legal team as I got back in the car. Across the lot, a small security camera at the warehouse clicked to life, silently capturing his humiliation. By the time we pulled away, he was still standing there, envelope in hand, watching everything crumble in silence. By the time the sun set that evening, every news anchor had their own version of the story. They dissected my voice, the tone in my father's silence, the clip of him blinking too slowly as the audio played. But none of them knew what came next. That night, Mason called. His voice cracked before he even got to the words. Dad's gone, he said. They think it was his heart. Sometime last night. I didn't cry. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at the window across my apartment, watching the shadows grow long on the wall. Then I whispered, "Okay," and ended the call. 2 mornings later, I drove out to my father's estate. Henry rode with me, silent except for the occasional glance. He didn't ask if I was all right. I think we both knew that word didn't fit anymore. Reporters lined the gates like vultures in tailored jackets. Cameras flashed even through the tinted windows. My fingers clenched around the steering wheel, not from fear, but sheer fatigue, the kind that builds after years of pretending everything was fine. Mason waited just inside the wrought iron gate. His suit looked slept in, hair flat against his forehead. He stepped closer and said softly, "He didn't leave a message for me." I nodded once, then walked ahead of him. The house felt colder than I remembered, quiet in a way that made every floorboard louder, every memory sharper. In the study, the smell of leather and old cologne still lingered. On the desk, beneath a crystal paperweight, was an envelope with my name on it. The handwriting was unmistakable. I sat, picked it up. Inside, to my daughter, the one I never understood. I paused, then kept reading. You challenged everything I built, and you were right to. I thought walls were the same thing as strength. You broke them, and for that, I hated you. But maybe it's what we needed. Maybe it's what I couldn't admit. Each sentence stung differently. I didn't know how to love without control. Maybe you'll do better. Maybe you already have. By the time I reached the end, my hands were trembling. But not with grief, It felt like something else. Release. The knock on the door came gently. Mr. Creel, the family attorney, stepped in with a small stack of papers. He cleared his throat. Ms. Lucero, your father's final directives are simple. The company's shares are to be divided equally between you and your brother. However, he designated sole voting authority to you. Mason stood in the doorway behind him, stunned. Wait, she's running Dalton? I stood up slowly. No, we're rebuilding it. Together, but it's going to look different this time. He didn't argue, just nodded. Then I'm in. 3 months later, the name on the front of the building had changed. Lucero Dynamics. The first initiative we launched was called the Integrity Grant, a program funding women in business ethics. Henry and I stood in my new office the morning it went public. Sunlight spilled through the wall of glass behind my desk, warming the space that still smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. It's poetic, he said, sipping his coffee. The daughter they tried to silence is now funding voices like hers. I turned my eyes to the framed photo on my desk, the same one taken the night of that disastrous client dinner. Me in a navy blazer, holding a presentation clicker, jaw clenched mid-sentence. But now, under the glass, a small engraving read, "The night everything started." Beside it sat the actual clicker, the same one I'd held in my hand the moment my father fired me. I picked it up, thumb resting on the worn rubber button. And for a second, I remembered that girl, the one standing in front of a crowd, trying to save something that never wanted to be saved. I pressed the button. The screen behind me lit up. A single sentence appeared. Truth doesn't destroy legacies. Lies do. I smiled, then whispered, "All right, let's begin again." Some people say revenge ends the story. I say it starts the next one, if you build it on truth.